This is a human embryo, and of course it's very precious and has all correlated ethical and medical and implications. We need to think about the benefit that we can get, but also the risk on the other side and ethical concern that could lead the change of the 14-day rule. This is my opinion, but I don't think we're at the stage where the technology would allow us to go beyond that stage. A lot of work has been done on advances in growing them in the lab and in culture conditions, but I think we're still far away from advances in the technology to be able to actually growing the embryo beyond that limit.
You need to be asked about a concrete proposal that has a concrete benefit, and then you can make the sacrifice. But to say, let's sacrifice something which has at least kept this within bounds for so many years on the basis of, you never know, it might help. that's not a well, that leads to a world without rules, and people should be very skeptical about what is being promised that they're getting for getting rid of a rule which is the best rule we've got.
Currently, laws in the UK are very strong and strict regarding how long embryos can be kept for research. There's really clear reasons for that, and mainly it's to do with, firstly, patients. They may not feel comfortable with keeping embryos for a longer period. And secondly, technology is not at the point where we're 100% sure that those embryos can be kept safely and it can be useful for them. Also, we need to consider that actually donations of embryos in clinics is actually quite difficult to accomplish. And therefore, most of the embryos that are donated are used fairly quickly.
I think there are scientists who think that this could be incredibly beneficial, and I think that view is quite widely shared. But it's also not that uncommon to hear people say, well, let's do the research that we can up until 14 days before we try to extend it, because it's only really in the last probably, I think, 6 years or so that scientists have been able to culture embryos for 13 days. Obviously, they can't keep them beyond that now. So that period, I guess, kind of 9 days to 30 days is relatively new. So I would say a majority of scientists probably do think that there are compelling arguments for talking about changing it, but there are some voices who think maybe we should consolidate what we've got.
This time around, we're not going to move from 14 to 140 days. It's going to be a much smaller jump, and maybe most people could live with that jump. But by definition, that means there might be another jump in the future. I don't normally like the slippery slope argument in ethics, but I think this is an example where I start to say, you're getting awfully close to being on a slippery surface. It may not be sloping down at this stage, but it is getting close to it. So I'd want to ask questions about that.
I don't know quite where I stand on this, because on the one hand, I think it's a great idea if we extend it, whether that's by 3 days or up to 28 days, because it allows further research to be conducted, and that can help patients in different ways in the future. And I have benefited from medical research as well. It's enabled us to use a donor to have a chance at growing our family. It didn't work out, but I did walk down that road. On the other hand, I think if we extend the rule, where do we draw the line? Will we find ourselves in a position later on where we're experimenting on fetuses, maybe even young babies? You know, there are a lot of ethical and moral implications to consider.